Sometimes rivalry games just end up being far too close for comfort. Even if you feel like that you're the more superior team, you feel like that you're better than advertised, and you're trying to rebound after a heartbreaking loss on the road, it doesn't usually happen against a rival. And that's exactly what we saw in the Deep South's oldest rivalry, as Georgia does win 31-13, but it never felt too close for comfort. Welcome on into SEC Unfiltered postgame show. I'm Cole Thompson, riding solo this week, breaking down everything that we saw at Sanford Stadium. Real quickly, make sure that you hit the subscribe button down below. It takes 2 seconds. Just go ahead, make sure that you hit subscribe, and also hit that ring notification. That way you don't miss any live shows, any actual breakdowns, any conversations that we do during the week. Make sure that you also download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Make sure if you want to keep the back and forth banter with me going, it's at Mr. Cole Thompson. And check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at RHOBACK. Look good, feel good this upcoming fall on game days with the promo code SECU for 20% off your very first purchase. Listen, we know the weather is changing. Fall foliage is on the horizon, and you want to be dressed the nine on game days. Do so at RHOBACK.com. 20% off when you use the promo code SECU. Final score 31-13, though it never felt too close for comfort. And what's really interesting is Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered was at SEC Media Days down in Dallas. And he mentioned with Hugh Freeze, what is it like to play in these big time matchups? Alabama last year, you're going down to the wire. A 4th and 31 is the ultimate difference between Hugh Freeze getting a win at Jordan-Hare in his first Iron Bowl. You also have the game last year in the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Back and forth battle. Peyton Thorne looks as advertised. He's living up to expectations of who he's supposed to be as a quarterback. And you hear Hugh Freeze say, maybe I have to translate that to the other games, the non-marquee matchups. Lo and behold, that message still has not sunk in down on the plains, but it does when you play in these type of games. Georgia keeps things really close in the first half, never seems to be able to pull away. Both teams actually look pretty consistent on all avenues on first down, third down, total yards. Both teams nearly pass for the same amount. Both completion percentages are around the same amount. Both yards per attempt, both rushing yards, both yards after contact, and even penalties were close. No turnovers by either side. You got to feel like in this type of game, somebody chose to woke up and actually act like who they are. If you were to tell me a few weeks ago that we were going to see 2 undefeated squads travel down to Sanford Stadium and do battle, and the final score would be 31-13, I wouldn't be that shocked. Keep in mind that this is year 2 of Hugh Freeze. This is year 2 of the system. This is also the team that's supposed to be as advertised with the transfers that come in. High-profile recruiting class comes in. They played like it. But now you have to remember that they're sitting at 2-3 and now 2-4, wondering, can we play this way against Mizzou? Can we play this way against Kentucky? Can we play this way when we have to take on Vanderbilt, who right now is taking Alabama down to the woodshed and kind of making them their own bitch in their backyard? That's really what we look at when talking about this team. Can they do that? Because against a team like Georgia, they were. Peyton Thorne played pretty perfect. You want to talk about not having a mental mistake in the fourth quarter? Really not his fault that there's just better competition sitting in Athens. Talk about these wide receivers stepping on up, and not just Keandre Lambert-Smith, who did finish the course with a team leading 95 yards, but Malcolm Simmons. You also had Damari Alston, Rivaldo Fairweather, Robert Lewis, all made plays. Everyone was stepping on forward. Jarquez Hunter finally saw some consistency on the ground. Over the 7.1 rushing yards per attempt, 91 yards per play, found his way into the end zone. You got to feel good. The defense did its job also. Multiple punts, multiple formations to where you were putting them in third and uncomfortable. That's the version that you expected when you thought that you were getting a Hugh Freeze-led team. And then you hear the way that he's going out and winning on the recruiting trail. And this is where Auburn fans kind of get back to reality and go, well, here's the deal. We're not there just yet. We're nowhere near where we ultimately want to be. But there's enough on the tape to where you see a lot of promise and potential against a team that took Alabama all the way back and nearly had the biggest comeback in SEC history. And we went on their backyard after being embarrassed back-to-back weeks at home and made things interesting for them. Made things very cautious for them at that point. But ultimately, you have to realize that one team is sitting with a shot of winning a national title, and the other one is still building the next level of the foundation moving forward. That's what the difference of this game was. Carson Beck finishes overall with a pretty solid day, 240 yards, 2 passing touchdowns. Trevor Etienne and Nate Frazier were able to boot, scoot, and boogie like Brooks and Dunn for 2 touchdowns while averaging over 5 yards per play. Colby Young stepped on up. London Humphrey stepped on up. Dominic Lovett with a big 10-yard touchdown right before halftime. All that aside, that's kind of expected from Georgia. But again, you have to realize this is just one of those games that somehow, some way, things stay interesting. And maybe that's not a knock on Kirby Smart. Maybe that's a testament of what Hugh Freeze can be. Maybe that's a testament about what Hugh Freeze is trying to implement down in the Plains. And it's not there yet. But you heard it this offseason. Hugh Freeze can play up to the competition in the big-time games, in the Deep South's oldest rivalry, in the Iron Bowl. But then somehow he allows a Kip Lewis 67-yard touchdown on an interception to decide how that game transpires at home. He allows a Cal team to go ahead and get 4 turnovers because of insufficient play calling, insubordinate coaching, the inconsistencies at the quarterback position. Everyone seems to wake up for the big-time moments, but here's the problem. You got to translate it to the little moments. You're sitting at 2-4, but this is one of those games where if you go back to the Plains, you actually feel pretty confident in yourself. We did a lot of good. We made some plays. We were decent on third down. We moved the sticks. We finished with over 300 total yards of offense, and we didn't shoot ourselves in the foot. That's something to be proud of if you're Auburn. And if you're Georgia, honestly, this is just one of those games where it always seems to either come down to the wire, where it's always a bit too close for comfort, or, and sometimes this is the reality, you just blow them out of the water because you're a better team in every way, shape, and form. But it doesn't define your season. How I'm going to view this game moving forward is that if I see this version of Auburn, they will be able to get a win. Maybe it's against Missouri on the road. They're getting a bye week. They're going to get healthy. They're going to get mentally prepared. Maybe it's against Kentucky. Maybe it's against Vanderbilt. Bobby Yaga comes back home. He knows that he is very unwelcome down in the Plains these days because of what he's doing currently against Alabama. But also, maybe this Vanderbilt team has that spark one week and just dead the next one. What about Texas A&M? Texas A&M at this point certainly feels like you have to at least put them in the chatter of the college football playoff dark horse conversation. Now, you don't need to go ahead and crown them the next big-time threat in the SEC, but you at least got to say, listen, they did good today against a top 10 Mizzou team. What if we can be that version against the Aggies and end their season on our home turf? That's the way you have to be, but you can't play this way against a Georgia squad, against an Alabama squad, and then find your way to be fickle and feeble against programs like Cal, like New Mexico in the first half, like New Mexico State for that matter. That's what's so frustrating with Auburn. Moments like today is where you feel really confident about the future of Hugh Freeze. Moments like today is where you feel really confident about the direction that this program can go in. And they landed a quarterback in Deuce Knight that they believe is the best fit for Hugh Freeze's offense, which again, you're not asking to play in 2025. You're asking to be the long-term solution for a quick overall current problem. You're going to have to go out and add a quarterback in the transfer portal. But today you can't complain if you're an Auburn fan about anything Peyton Thorne did. What did he do that was so bad? Finished 16-27 for 200 yards? See multiple passes be dropped or broken up by 5-star defensive linemen or defensive ends or even better defensive backs in coverage? What did he do wrong? Did he not run for over 15 yards? Yeah, he did. He ran for 22. Did he not pick up multiple first downs with his legs? Yeah, he did. You can't be complaining about that. It was an overall game to where if you play that way against Cal, you win. You play that way against New Mexico, you win in the first half and you don't even have to worry about the second half. You play that way against Oklahoma, who cares about what happens on a 3rd and 4 play? That game is so far out of reach. It's like, oh, it was just an easy interception that was expected at this point. That's the version that you have to play against inferior competition. This is like Texas A&M back in the Jimbo Fisher days. So for those of you that don't remember, A&M would always wake up to play against the quality competition. Alabama came to town. It was a close call. They went down to Baton Rouge. It was always an interesting game. Or Baton Rouge came on down to College Station and they made things easily in their favor. But then they played against South Carolina and they go on the road to Columbia and it's not that great. Or they go down to Starkville, Mississippi and it's Mike Leach getting the last laugh. That's kind of how Auburn feels right now over the last 2 years. Overall success against the quality teams lackluster performances against those in your competition. And if there's that middle ground, you feel better about the direction that Hugh Freeze is going in on every avenue. But it can't be that way simply against Alabama and Georgia. You can't just play up to the level of those teams while they're actually having some struggles from time to time. And for Georgia, again, this was a get-right game. It wasn't really, because you never get right in a rivalry, but you made it your own. You made it work. Carson Beck didn't have a turnover. Trevor Etienne didn't have a turnover. He found the end zone twice. Nate Frazier was able to average 5.4 yards per play. Your wide receiver stepped on up. You kept things interesting. You forced punch. You forced third and longs. You showed that this is the version of Georgia that is sustainable. And the good news is you got 2 weeks to prepare, work out those minor kinks, those third and longs, those areas to where you have some struggles at times before you have to take on before you have to take on Texas in their backyard. And that's going to be the really interesting one. How do you look at that point? You get Mississippi State. That's a good thing. You get Mississippi State next week, and that's going to basically be able to allow you to tune on up, work out those minor kinks, the mechanic, the flaws, and it's in your own backyard. So already you should have no questions whatsoever. Mississippi State usually is a tricky team for some, but that's not the case here whatsoever at all. You feel good overall if you are looking at how you didn't make mental mistakes for Georgia. But again, sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles, especially in these type of matchups. Georgia will be fine. Georgia will be right back on task, fighting for a college football playoff spot, and they'll be in the running to hoist up a national title. I don't worry about that. My main question in this game, the way that you saw Auburn play, the way you saw Auburn attack, the way that you saw Auburn at least keep things interesting going into the final 15 minutes, can that work against their level of competition? Because if so, now we change our opinion of Auburn once again. Maybe they aren't going to be a 3-9 team. Maybe they're not going to be a 9-3 team. But we're teetering that line when it comes to Auburn as 5-7, 6-6, 7-5, and all still is on the table. There is no error to where you think that Auburn can't make things interesting. And if so, well, that's what you got to look forward to. That's what you have to look forward to going into 2025. Use these type of games, these games that you feel like you're trending upward, as the catapult into matchups that you can win, into matchups that you feel like that you can come away with the victory, and the aura and the momentum actually stays well on your side. So that way, when you go travel to the Iron Bowl, you aren't being embarrassed. More importantly, you're taking this thing down to the wire. And much like last year, Jalen Milroe on 4th and 31, maybe Peyton Thorne ends his Auburn career with a major touchdown. Let me know in the comment section down below. What were your overall thoughts on the Deep South Silvers rivalry? What were your overall thoughts on the direction of Auburn in this game, the direction of Georgia in this game? Is there momentum for both of these teams to kind of figure things out? Or at this point, is it just one of those rivalries that seems to always kind of keep things close? Like, rate, review, subscribe. Make sure you're following us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Make sure if you want to keep up with me, it's at Mr. Cole Thompson. Check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. And of course, hit that ring notification. That way you don't miss a single live show. We're going live in about 5 minutes to break down everything that we saw between Ole Miss and South Carolina. Depending on how the Alabama game ends, we may be doing a live reaction to that. And naturally, of course, we're going to be breaking down everything that we see tonight in Fayetteville between Arkansas and Tennessee, which feels like at this point has to be the Super Bowl for Sam Pittman. I'm Cole Thompson. Thanks, SEC Unfiltered. Peace.